Welcome to Numismatic Vault Extra. Today, we're exploring the top 4 most valuable 1-cent wheat penny coins from the United States of America, United States. In this video, we'll cover their current market values, highlight rare coins, and explain the specific conditions that make certain wheat pennies extremely valuable, including rare copper varieties and distinct color shades that have become major players in the coin collector and investor world. These rare treasures are more than just pieces of history. They're some of the most valuable coins collectors are actively hunting today. So, if you're a coin enthusiast or someone who appreciates the beauty and significance of American currency, backhand index pointing right, this video is for you. Let's get started. The story of the 1953 wheat penny begins not in a vault or museum, but in the everyday commerce of mid-20th century America. It begins in a time when pennies were part of daily life, coins exchanged for candy, newspapers, pay phones, and bus fares. In pockets, purses, and cash registers across the nation, the humble wheat penny, so named for the 2 wheat ears on its reverse, quietly held the economy together. Few thought much of these pennies at the time, yet today, some of the rarest examples can be among the most sought-after survivors in the collector world. In 1953, the United States was deep into a period of post-war growth and transformation. Families were building new lives in suburbs, televisions were becoming common in homes, and a sense of optimism buzzed in the air. Into this world walked the wheat penny, minted in Denver, marked with a small yet significant D on its obverse. A mark that, to coin collectors decades later, would signal origin, story, and identity. This penny wasn't silver, nor was it meant to be glamorous. It was simply copper, minted to be used and lost in the river of everyday life. Yet, history has a way of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. Most 1953 wheat pennies were scraped, scratched, dented, and circulated until their surfaces smoothed and their details blurred. But a very small number survived in remarkable condition, preserved like tiny pieces of time frozen in metal. These rare survivors are the ones that electrify the imagination, the coins that people whisper about in collector circles, the coins that can command prices that seem almost unimaginable for something that was once just a penny. The wheat penny design itself carries emotional weight. On the obverse stands Abraham Lincoln, a man whose life story rises from humble beginnings to national hero, forever etched in copper to remind us of perseverance and principle. On the reverse, the 2 wheat stalks stretch skyward, symbols of America's agricultural backbone and the everyday labor that fed and built the nation. In a sense, every wheat penny is a tribute to the working heart of America. The D Mint mark on the 1953 penny tells us where it was struck, the Denver Mint, a facility known for rugged efficiency and high output. Denver-struck coins populate many collections, but it is the rare high-grade survivors, coins that escaped circulation damage, that draw real attention. The difference between an ordinary worn penny and a pristine 1953 D is like the difference between a forgotten echo and a voice that commands a room. Collectors often talk about survivors when they refer to coins like this. A survivor is a coin that endured decades without losing its brilliance, without losing the sharp details of Lincoln's coat or the fine lines of the wheat ears. These survivors terrify dealers and thrill collectors because they are vanishingly rare. Most pennies minted in 1953 were spent and worn down to smooth, indistinct discs. Those that remain in brilliant condition are treasures. Imagine discovering such a coin today, pristine, crisp, and glowing with original mint luster. In the soft light, it looks almost alive, as if it could tell you every hand it passed through and every pocket it warmed. The joy of that moment, the sudden realization that this is not an ordinary penny, sends a thrill through the collector's heart that is impossible to describe to someone who has never experienced it. Some collectors even believe that among the millions of 1953 D wheat pennies that left the Denver Mint, a handful of mint errors exist: coins struck on flawed planchets, coins with doubled dies, or coins with off-center strikes. These anomalies are rare, breathtaking in their imperfection, and often far more valuable than even the finest condition normal strike. The possibility of finding one adds another layer of excitement to every roll of pennies, every jar of change. But even without dramatic errors, the most breathtaking 1953 D pennies are those that have resisted the wear of decades. A flawless example in uncirculated condition commands attention, not just for its value, but for the story it carries: that this small piece of copper survived where millions did not, that it lived through years without losing its original shine, and that someone cared enough to preserve it. Collectors speak about the 1953 D with awe because it is a symbol of endurance. Time wears down most coins, just as it wears down memories and moments. But the right coin, preserved with luck and care, becomes a little miracle. It is a pocket-sized artifact of mid-century America, a relic of a time when pennies mattered in ways they rarely do today. The journey of a 1953 D wheat penny from mint to modern collector hands is filled with quiet poetry. It begins as a piece of everyday commerce, slides into pockets and jars, and then, for the few that survive, ends up in the hands of someone who sees not just copper, but story. That transformation, from ordinary money to extraordinary artifact, is what gives these coins their power. There are countless tales in the numismatic community of hidden treasures found in old coin collections, forgotten change, and dusty drawers. A coin that was once spent without thought becomes the centerpiece of a collection decades later. Such stories fuel the belief that treasures still hide in unlikely places, and that sometimes the most valuable objects are the ones we overlook. The idea that a wheat penny, a coin once worth only a fraction of a dollar, could one day command prices far beyond imagination is not born of fantasy, but of history's tendency to surprise us. Rarity intersects with condition, and suddenly a tiny piece of metal becomes a treasure that collectors would fight over, bid for, and proudly display. As time marches on, fewer uncirculated examples remain. Every year, more coins are lost, damaged, or forgotten forever. That dwindling supply makes the survivors even more precious. A perfect 1953 D wheat penny is not just rare, it is a remnant of history, a symbol of a time that will never come again in exactly the same way. For many collectors, finding such a coin is more than a hobby, it is a quest. It is the hope that somewhere, tucked away in change passed down through generations or hidden in a dusty old jar, there might be a coin that could transform a life, not just with monetary value, but with a sense of wonder and connection to the past. In the end, the 1953 D wheat penny is more than currency. It is a small piece of American heritage. It reminds us that value is often hidden, that beauty can reside in the simplest objects, and that history sometimes whispers through everyday things. For the person who discovers a pristine example, it is not just a coin, but a story, a treasure, and perhaps even a life-changing find. Next up. The story of the 1957 D wheat penny begins in a time long before digital money, before credit cards were in wallets, and when small coins carried real weight in everyday American life. In 1957, the United States stood proud in the post-war era, confident and growing, its people moving forward with optimism, building families, suburbs, and futures. In that energetic atmosphere, coins like the wheat penny were not just currency, they were part of daily rhythm, jingling in pockets, tipping hats, buying candy and newspapers, and binding the country together with common touch points. This wheat penny, struck at the Denver Mint, hence the tiny D mint mark beneath the date, is more than just metal and design. It is a whisper from the past, a silent survivor of the everyday exchanges that defined a generation. On the obverse, Abraham Lincoln's determined profile greets anyone who holds the coin. His image, chosen to mark the centennial of his birth nearly half a century earlier, had by 1957 become familiar and full of meaning, a tribute to resilience, leadership, and the kind of grit that builds nations. On the reverse, the wheat ears frame the words 1 cent, literally grounding the coin in the agricultural heart of America. Those wheat stalks were more than ornamentation. They spoke of harvests, farms, families, and the unglamorous, unending work that sustains a society. That iconography resonates deeply, and it is one reason why wheat pennies remain beloved in the coin world long after their circulation life ended. Most of the 1957 D pennies were made for spending, and spend they were. They survived in pocket change, in cash registers, in the jingling jars of loose coins that sat on kitchen counters, and in glove boxes. Over time, most of these coins rubbed down, worn smooth, and lost their original luster. But that very fact, that most were used and aged, is what makes the few spectacular survivors so mesmerizing. When a coin escapes wear, it becomes more than a relic, it becomes a time capsule. Imagine holding a 1957 D penny that still looks almost new. Its surfaces gleam, its details are sharp, and the wheat stalks and Lincoln profile pop with remarkable clarity. These pristine survivors stand in stark contrast to the millions that faded into circulation. They feel almost unnatural, as if they slipped out of time and remained untouched while decades passed all around them. In the numismatic world, condition is king, and these rare high-grade examples are among the crown jewels. Collectors don't just see metal in these coins. They see moments of history that survive by chance. A high-grade 1957 D penny that escaped circulation is like a secret kept safe for generations, a whisper from 1957 that suddenly speaks loud again. The thrill of discovering such a coin, perhaps buried in an old coin album, found in a forgotten jar, or unearthed in a dusty attic, is the pulse of coin collecting. It is the hope that anywhere, at any time, something extraordinary might wait hidden in plain sight. Yet rarity and preservation are only part of the story. Some collectors believe that certain minting anomalies may exist among 1957 D pennies. Subtle differences in strike, slight variations in the planchet, or tiny mismatches in the die impressions that render a specific coin unique. In the numismatic world, unusual strikes or anomalies can catapult a coin from collector interest to legend. A coin with an oddity, exposed only under magnification, can draw eyes, excite bidders, and transform its monetary value in dramatic ways. Now imagine pairing rarity with anomaly. A 1957 D penny that is not only in brilliant condition, but also carries a striking variation. Such a piece would be the stuff of dreams. In auction halls and collector forums, coins of this caliber are spoken about in reverent tones. The whispered possibility that a seemingly ordinary penny could be one of the rarest survivors, capable of commanding astonishing prices. There is something poetic about that possibility, that a humble penny could one day make someone's fortune. The idea captures the imagination because it speaks to something deeper, hope. In a world where value is often hidden, where everyday objects can contain extraordinary secrets, the 1957 D wheat penny becomes a symbol of potential. It reminds us that even small, overlooked things can hold immense power when seen with a keen eye and an open heart. The wheat penny era itself is a chapter in American life that feels alive with character. These coins were minted from 1909 until 1958, nearly half a century, and they passed through the hands of students, soldiers, shopkeepers, and everyday families. Each coin, including the 1957 D, passed through countless stories before arriving at whatever pocket or purse sheltered it last. That journey leaves traces, not in value but in emotional resonance. Today, collectors prize wheat pennies not just for their metal content or their scarcity, but for the stories they carry. A flawless 1957 D penny is more than an artifact. It is a bridge to the daily life of a moment that no longer exists. A moment of payphones and nickel sodas, of manual labor and growing prosperity. Holding such a coin is like touching a piece of memory that is both personal and collective. In the top echelons of the coin market, the most valuable specimens are not simply rare. They are remarkable in condition, with surfaces that radiate original mint sparkle, edges that remain sharp, and details that defy the decades of time that have passed. A 1957 D penny in this state becomes not just collectible, but iconic. It becomes a trophy for the collector who seeks both beauty and significance. And here lies the dream, the possibility that somewhere, buried beneath years of overlooked change, there sits a 1957 D penny that survived untouched, shining with brilliance that defies its age. It might slide out of a jar of mixed coins, fall out of a childhood coin folder, or be found in a forgotten envelope passed down through generations. In that moment of discovery, the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. Collectors describe that moment with awe, the sudden recognition that a coin they once overlooked is not just old, but exceptional. It is the thrill of transformation. A common object becomes a rare treasure, capturing attention, sparking bidding wars, and rewriting someone's story overnight. In the world of numismatics, these are the moments that keep people searching, studying, and dreaming. Yet even beyond monetary potential, the 1957 D wheat penny holds symbolic weight. It reminds us that value is often hidden in plain sight, that time changes meaning, and that history sometimes reveals its treasures only when we learn to look closely. It teaches us patience, curiosity. The story of the 1944 wheat penny begins deep in the heart of a nation at war, a country whose everyday life was shaped by sacrifice, resilience, and an unshakable sense of purpose. In 1944, the United States was engulfed in World War II, a conflict that touched every home, every family, every generation. Factories hummed around the clock, soldiers marched across oceans, and even the metals used in everyday coins were influenced by global need. The humble wheat penny, struck without a mint mark in Philadelphia, became part of that great story, a tiny artifact of a vast and intense moment in history. This coin, made primarily from bronze, was not silver, yet it carries a kind of quiet brilliance that transcends its metal content. To hold a 1944 wheat penny is to feel the pulse of a different America, one where people clipped ration coupons, bought war bonds, and whispered prayers for loved ones far from home. In its copper hue lies the echo of factory floors and kitchen tables, markets and marches, ordinary moments stitched together with extraordinary courage. The wheat stalks on the reverse, once chosen as a symbol of America's agricultural strength, take on new meaning during this era, not just food for the nation, but hope for its future. No mint mark on a 1944 penny tells us that it was struck in Philadelphia, the oldest and most prolific mint in the United States. Philadelphia had been producing coins since the very beginning of the nation, and by 1944 its presses were tuned to perfection, yet even perfection still carried the hand of the human craftsman. The penny's design, though humble, was iconic. Abraham Lincoln's determined profile on the obverse, and the twin wheat ears on the reverse, reaching upward as though symbolizing the country's unyielding aspiration toward peace and prosperity. At the time of its mintage, the 1944 penny was just another piece of change. It bought groceries, paid for bus fare, or simply jingled in a pocket, unnoticed and unremarkable. It was not rare. It was not made for collectors. But what makes this coin fascinating, and in rare instances incredibly valuable, is not just its date or metal, but its condition, survival, and story. Most pennies of this era show the wear of decades, smooth surfaces, faint details, and the dull patina of everyday existence. Only a tiny fraction survived in pristine form, and those are the coins that capture the imagination of collectors. Imagine, if you will, a 1944 wheat penny lifted from a dusty jar untouched since the 1950s, its brilliant copper still gleaming, its details crisp like the very day it was struck. This is not a common sight. It is a rarity that causes seasoned collectors to pause, inhale sharply, and feel a rush of excitement mingle with nostalgia. In those moments, a simple penny stops being small change and becomes a treasure, not because of its gold or silver content, but because of what it represents, a preserved moment in time that survived trials most coins did not. Collectors understand that condition is everything. A high-grade, uncirculated 1944 penny, one that escaped the friction of pockets and coin trays for nearly 80 years, is a testament to preservation against all odds. Such a coin carries a luster that reflects both light and history. Its edges are sharp, its surfaces untarnished, and its relief deep and clear. These survivors belong to a rarefied class of coins that feel almost alive with their own presence. Then, there are the whispered tales, the stories that get passed from one collector to another in hushed tones at conventions and on forums. Tales of hidden errors, subtle variations in strike intensity, or subtle die differences that make one 1944 penny stand apart from another. In the coin world, even the smallest oddity can become a point of fascination, a thread that leads to discovery and, sometimes, extraordinary value. The possibility that such anomalies might exist among these wheat pennies fuels the dream of treasure hidden in plain sight. And it is that dream, the possibility of transformation, that keeps collectors hooked. The idea that someone might stumble upon a coin in astonishing condition, or one that carries a rare variety unseen for decades, and find that it commands a price that seems almost mythical, that is the spark that ignites curiosity and passion. Because in the end, coins like the 1944 wheat penny are more than metal, they are carriers of possibility. Every survivor of this coin is a whisper of an era we can no longer touch directly. Even a worn 1944 penny holds the resonance of a time when the world was in turmoil, when families huddled around radios for news, when young men and women left home not knowing if they would ever return. To hold one of these coins is to feel connected to the triumphs and tragedies of everyday life during that monumental chapter of history. It was not unusual in 1944 to find coins that bore the scars of their use. Life was hard, and pennies were used relentlessly. But some coins fell out of circulation quickly, tucked into collections, saved by someone who sensed something special, or simply forgotten in a jar. Those pennies, sheltered from wear and tear, are the ones that today send shivers down the spines of collectors, because they are conscious reminders that history can survive in unexpected forms. The emotional pull of the 1944 wheat penny also comes from its place in the broader narrative of American coinage. The wheat penny series, introduced in 1909, would continue until 1958, nearly half a century of storytelling through metal. Each coin bore witness to eras of growth, hardship, change, and resilience. The 1944 issue sits in the middle of that arc, a quiet hero among the cast of currency. In the modern coin market, rarity and demand combine to elevate the most remarkable survivors to astonishing values. A pristine 1944 wheat penny, evaluated in the right condition and certified as uncirculated, can fetch prices that far exceed the imagination of everyday collectors. Yet it's not the face value that matters here. It is survival, condition, and story. That is what transforms a tiny penny into a coin that can command attention, admiration, and even life-changing sums. Some people find these coins in the most ordinary places, mixed in old coin rolls, discovered in a grandfather's collection, or uncovered in a forgotten jar tucked away for decades. In that instant of discovery, when a person realizes that something ordinary is extraordinary, hearts pound, breaths catch, and the moment becomes unforgettable. That is the human side of numismatics, the part that transcends value charts and enters the realm of wonder. Of course, not every 1944 penny is a rare treasure. Most remain common, worn, and valuable. The story of the 1954 wheat penny begins in a time when America was rebuilding itself after the trials of war, when children played in backyards oblivious to the grinding change of the wider world, and when the everyday clink of small coins and pocket change carried more meaning than most people realized. This penny wasn't minted in silver, but its place in history and its potential in today's market can seem as rich and transformative as precious metal itself. To hold a 1954 wheat penny is to hold a piece of mid-century America, a tiny mirror reflecting all the hope, resilience, and ordinary magic of the era. In 1954, the United States was standing tall. Post-war prosperity had taken hold. Families moved into new homes. Factories produced both goods and optimism. And in the bustling Denver Mint, carved into the Rocky Mountain landscape, presses hummed night and day, striking coin after coin that would enter circulation, pass through countless hands, and become part of the rhythm of everyday life. The penny, simple and humble, was everywhere, in desk drawers, draped over rings of keys, scattered on countertops, and tossed into jars labeled, "Save your change." The wheat penny design itself was more than just a motif. It was symbolic poetry. On the obverse stood Abraham Lincoln, a figure whose own life story embodied rising from obscurity to historical greatness. In Lincoln, Americans saw endurance and moral strength. On the reverse, 2 ears of wheat stretched upward like proud sentinels, echoes of America's agricultural roots and a tribute to the farmers, laborers, and everyday people who built the nation's backbone. That combination of imagery made the wheat penny resonate deeply with a generation who still remembered the Great Depression and had now witnessed global conflict. Most of the 1954 pennies were meant to be used, spent on milkshakes, newspapers, streetcars, and payphones. Most did exactly that. Decades of use smoothed surfaces and softened edges. Millions were lost in couch cushions or mixed into savings jars and forgotten. Yet against all odds, a precious few emerged from circulation with remarkable preservation. These survivors, rare, untarnished, and radiant with original mint luster, are the coins that send collectors' hearts racing. For most people, pennies are just pocket change, a copper token valued only for what it can buy. But for collectors, a penny in exceptional condition is like a time capsule, a sliver of the past preserved in metal. When a 1954 penny still holds its original shine, its fine details still crisp, it becomes more than everyday currency. It becomes a whisper from history that managed to survive decades of use, neglect, and obscurity. The Denver mint mark, the small D beneath the date, tells us where this coin was born. In the mid-20th century, Denver was a workhorse of American coin production, turning out millions of pieces to meet the demands of an expanding economy. Yet even in that massive flow of examples, only a tiny fraction escaped where to become the brilliant survivors that captivate collectors today. It's in those survivors that legends are born. A flawless 1954 wheat penny is more than just rare, it is exceptional. When looked at under bright light, its surfaces can glow with a warmth that seems impossible for a coin over half a century old. That glow is not just copper, it's history, story, endurance, and mystery all wrapped together. It is the electric moment when the past speaks to the present. Collectors often search for anomalies, stray strikes, doubled dies, unusual planchets, but even absent a dramatic error, the eye-popping beauty of a brilliant, uncirculated specimen elevates it to treasure status. These are the coins that make bidders whisper and then shout, that make auctions tense and exhilarating, that make a penny worth far more than anyone might have dreamed when it was first struck. The emotional pull of the 1954 wheat penny also comes from its place in the broader story of American coinage. The wheat penny series ran from 1909 until 1958, nearly half a century of shared experience, of veterans carrying them home, of children collecting them in albums, of everyday life transacting through the smallest denominations. In that lineage, the 1954 issue represents continuity and heritage just before the final years of the wheat design, before it gave way to new imagery in the years that followed. But where the coin's true magic lives is in the possibility that someone, somewhere, might hold a specimen so pristine that it opens doors no one expected. Hidden in a jar of forgotten change, tucked in the back of an old wallet, inherited without anyone realizing what was lost, until someone finally looks closely. That belief, the idea that a single coin could transform a collector's life, is the lifeblood of numismatics. As time goes on, fewer and fewer wheat pennies survive in top condition. Fewer still among the Denver mintages. The combination of age, circulation, and historical wear means that only the rarest survivors can still command dazzling market prices. And as demand grows, the few coins that remain unblemished shine ever brighter in the eyes of collectors and investors alike. It's easy to overlook a penny. That's part of its charm and part of its power. When people don't expect to find something valuable, they rarely check. That's why stories abound of rare coins found in old coin rolls, left untouched for generations, only to be discovered by someone curious enough to look. The thrill of that discovery, the sudden realization that something common could be extraordinary, is part of what drives treasure seekers to search again and again. A 1954 penny in exceptional condition bridges worlds. It connects the everyday life of mid-century America with the passionate collector today. It connects the past with the present. It connects memory with possibility. It speaks to both history and hope. For the person holding a truly exceptional example, it is more than copper. It is connection, wonder, and sometimes astonishing value. To own such a coin is to own a story that spans generations, minted in a world that no longer exists, surviving decades of change, and now recognized as something rare and valuable. It's a reminder that history is not just written in textbooks or monuments, but in the small objects that pass through millions of hands, and yet remain unchanged at their core. Imagine, just for a moment, holding a 1954 wheat penny that still shines with mint brilliance. Feel its weight, hear its history, and sense the invisible bridge it forms between your hands and a world long past. For some, that experience isn't just about value, it's about connection, legacy, and the quiet thrill of discovery. And so the 1954 wheat penny endures not just as a coin, but as a symbol of survival, of hidden worth, and of the extraordinary possibilities that can lie buried in ordinary things. For the fortunate soul who treasures an exceptional example, it can be more than a collectible. It can be a treasure that captures the imagination and, perhaps, even changes a life.